As an aroid lover, I'm a massive fan of the genus Amorphophallus, and most people know the giant Titan arum, one of the most famous of the Amorphophallus group. But this one is the Amorphophallus Atroviridis, and it's a much smaller and a much different plant. So let's take a look at this dark green plant. So this is Amorphophallus Atroviridis. This is the second or third one I've had, I think. I don't traditionally do very well with these, mainly because when I first got them, the first couple, I was quite new to keeping Amorphophallus, and I just wasn't experienced with the full cycle of care, so I lost them as tubers. So Atroviridis, the name is it's obviously the scientific name. So atro meaning black or dark, and viridis meaning green, so like viridian. So we got dark green really. So you can see that the leaves, or leaflets more accurately, are like a dark green. You can see them against other aroids or very similar aroids like Sarumatum and other Amorphophallus, that this is a really strong green. It's a very different green than any of the others. And the big thing that differentiates it is this leaf margin of pink here. I keep saying leaf, but it's a leaflet. So like all Amorphophallus, this here is one big leaf. It's one giant leaf all the way around, and these are leaflets off the leaf. So the main plant comes up off this petiole here. Let me just get down, come close for you. So the petiole goes all the way down to the base, and then down there is the stem, or more accurately called the tuber, which is a stem. So like all of the Amorphophallus, it goes through a cycle, starting with the tuber, which has gone down the previous year or just starting off. And then that grows this petiole, or it comes out with the petiole that then opens up with the leaflet. And then over the season, especially with the younger plants that aren't flowering, it will then, the leaves will generate enough energy to rebuild a new tuber. And then that cycles round again. And eventually it gets old enough to be able to flower, and you can get an inflorescence of it. So these are from central Thailand, and research has shown that they're grown in rocky limestone in Thailand, and they grow deep. So this is the pot that it was delivered in for me, and I'll probably repot it into one of my taller pots. And I do like terracotta for the Amorphophallus. Don't use a lot of terracotta overall. I have a lot of my aroids are in plastic of one type or another just for ease. But again, I've just found that Amorphophallus do better in terracotta. Now, the easiest way to kill these, and the way that I kill them really easily, is to overwater them. So they do like to be moist, so you don't want to completely ever dry them out when they're in flower, when you've got leaves on them. But what you do want to do is make sure that this is completely well draining. So this is the soil it was delivered in. And my particular one is from Grow Tropicals, and bear in mind I'm in the UK. And this is, if you put your finger in, it's just barely moist. It's almost like it isn't like a compost. It's got a lot more bark material in it, and a lot more moss that's dried out. So it will be moisture retentive, but if you pour water through this, it would drain straight out. So and it is quite loose. You can see it's not compact at all. And that's pretty much how you want to keep it. You don't want to compact these things down. You don't want them in anything that will retain the water, or they will rot out straight away. And more so, I find with these ones, the more tropical ones, than the more robust ones and the hard ones. And that would include ones like Amorphophallus konjac and Amorphophallus bulbifer, and some of the more robust ones that you'll see in for sale in the UK. So basically, with the cycle, you need to give it enough of a growing cycle in the year to make sure that that tuber is bigger than the previous year. Because if you don't, that's how you'll get problems. Your tuber will get smaller and smaller, and eventually it will die. What you've got to aim for is a tuber that's getting bigger on aggregate year on year, and eventually big enough to give you a flower. Now, along the way, the tuber in the ground here, or tuber in the pot, is going to throw off offsets. And those little offsets are going to give you things like this. Now this season will break off, and it will give me a whole nother plant, and that will start the cycle again. So vegetative reproduction is quite common. You will get, almost every season, you'll get new ones coming up like this and start the cycle again. So presuming you can get the right growing conditions, the right temperature and the right moisture, and we'll talk about temperature in a moment, then you will find that they throw out pups like this, just like a lot of other plants that you might be used to. And it comes up like this. It's quite interesting because it comes up with the leaflets are all pointing up like this once it emerges. It's a little bit different in the when it comes out of the tuber on its own, because it's got a bract around, it's got like a sheath around it, and it pops out of the sheath. I'll show you on screen what other Amorphophallus are like. I've got quite a few in the garden coming up at the moment, so I'll show you all the different ways that they look. But this is quite cute that it comes out like this with the leaflets pointing up, and they will, I won't pull it too much because I don't want to damage it. They'll just basically unfurl and just fold out into the shape of the parent. Now, the temperature-wise, that's another thing with these. So I grow mostly aroids that are capable of surviving a UK summer. So they're not hardy. Very, very few of what I've got are fully hardy. And obviously there are some colocasia that are fully hardy. There are some Araceae that are fully hardy. Saramatum, venosum, fully hardy. So there's lots of lots of aroids that are capable of surviving our normal winters. Not so much when we're getting the -7s and -8s, but some of the ones I've just mentioned will cope with even that. But these are not that. So Amorphophallus in general will not cope with freezing. They're not from a part of the world that freezes. They're mostly from Thailand or that neck of the woods anyway, Cambodia, China, areas that where there might be cold, so up in the Himalayas, etc. There might be some that get hit with a bit of cold, but they're not keen, or most of them are not keen on freezing. But what you want with this one, because it's from central Thailand, this one's going to need to be kept between, at the lowest, about 5, which I think is 40. So from 5 up to 35 is the range that I've read. So I would not really let mine get down to 5. I think if they get down to 5, they're going to start dropping. And what that means is this petiole starts to droop, falls over, then the leaf shrivels, and it's gone. Now that's how it ends its season anyway. So with Amorphophallus, these all will shrivel up, and then this will come off. This bit here, the petiole will come off the tuber. And then that's the time when you pull the tuber up and you store it for winter and start again in the spring once you've got better temperatures. But this is, most of mine are they're in a number of places. So they're in the garden, and I generally go for ones that can cope with that. They're in the greenhouse, which is the same, but a little bit more, obviously a bit more protected from the frost. Or they're in my one of 2 terrariums, or a vivarium actually. One which I keep moist, humidity of nearly 100%, and the other one I keep dry. So these are too big. So the size on this one is going to be generally, it's nearly there actually with this one, it's nearly 60 centimetres. So the size that you hear bandied around is 60 centimetres high and about 40 centimetres wide. So it's a good house plant actually. It's a beautiful, if you like your foliage, you're going to like this, this really dark velvety. It's not velvety it's not, I'm trying to think, like some of the anthurium. It's pretty much like something like a melanochrysum, something like that. So if you know some of your indoor aroids, so it's a bit more like Hederaceum scandens, something like that, like a micans, sorry. So yeah, it's got that little bit of a velvety feel to it. And obviously the petiole is like any of the Amorphophallus, just a solid chunk of vegetables. Now, in this one here, you probably can't see here, but if we can get really close, maybe even if I turn it to the light a bit more, this has actually got some spots on it, but they're very, very light. And that's like, it's almost like a lot of the other Amorphophallus do have like a giraffe type pattern, or a snake pattern, you know, depending on what you want to call it. You can see these little white dots here. So it has got some minor patterning to it, but nothing that would really stand out. But yeah, this is one, if you've got, you know, you're going to be keeping this one indoors most of the time. If you want to try Amorphophallus, I wouldn't say this is your one that you go for first. You need to have got familiar with something like a konjac or bulbifer or those kind of Amorphophallus first, and then try this one when you're a bit more confident with the growing cycle of these things. One thing you don't want to do definitely is let it sit in any sunlight. So if, like me, you keep them in a conservatory, you can't have them by the window, because one day of harsh midday sun, these leaves are crisping. You know, you lose these, like a lot of the aroids. You give them full direct sun for a day and you're going to lose them. And the other big thing, which I've talked about incessantly already, is do not drown them. So you want to be putting your finger in and making sure the top couple of inches is pretty much almost dried out before you start. And obviously, as soon as they've gone down, you stop watering completely and barely, you know, you don't water them as tubers at all. Keep water away from them. You don't want them to desiccate and dry out completely, but you know, you basically need to keep them as moisture free as you can, or you're going to get them rotting out even over winter. So that is Amorphophallus Atroviridis. What a beautiful, beautiful Amorphophallus.
I hope you're liking these videos, and if you are, please give us a thumbs up, because it does help us to get in front of other people that might like this kind of content. And if you like this video enough to give it a thumbs up, then why not subscribe to the channel, and I can let you know what we've been up to as we post new videos.